You know, some attics have more in them than just old clothing boxed up and Christmas ornaments, Christmas decorations. Yes, indeed. Some of them have scary things. Some attics have weird, old, ancient artifacts of a mysterious and horrific nature. And at least one attic has me in it. That's right. And tonight's mask here in the Mask Fan Attic is, well, let me just preface this with a little something. Let me just point out that for the most part, I tend to gravitate away from funny masks, goofy masks, silly characters. I tend to like creepy masks or realistic masks or, you know, masks that kind of look like they could exist plausibly rather than being more of the cartoon character sort of thing. Just there are some funny ones, but normally the funny ones aren't my biggest favorites. But one kind of goofy one that always stood out to me, and it's been around forever now, is one of the unsung and unheralded classics from Topstone Industries out of Danbury, Connecticut, who made gazillions of masks for many, many years, and whose mask advertisements used to grace the pages of many an old monster magazine. And you could always see these great drawings of the masks in the old monster magazines, and a lot of kids grew up with those drawings and those masks. But one of the ones you didn't see for some reason in those magazines too often was this thing, Prickle Puss. I kid you not. I'm not making that up. That's what it actually was called, Prickle Puss. And that's two words, P-R-I-C-K-L-E P-U-S-S. Prickle Puss. Thank you. And, well, nobody seems to have a great deal of insight into the history of Prickle Puss. I would have guessed, or I would have estimated, but I would not under any circumstances have guesstimated. I would have guessed that the mask came along first in like the mid to late 1970s. But as it turns out, further research and a little help from my good buddy Coffin Ray, or Ray do Caixão, as I like to call him, Ray Castile, who is an expert on all matters Topstone. Through a little detective work with him, it was uncovered that the original drawing, okay, the sketch upon which this was based, was drawn as far back as 1960, even though the mask didn't exist as far back as 1960. It appears that there was an early version of Prickle Puss in the Topstone line as early as like the 1963 period. And I never saw it, you know, for many years I never saw, I don't even know what that version looked like. I would guess that that version did not have this fur hood, because back in the 60s and early 70s, Topstone masks tended to just be rubber, plain. They didn't have hair and fur and all that stuff, and they usually were like three-quarter masks that just sort of stopped right there. So if there indeed are some Prickle Pusses from as far back as the 60s, they may not have the fur. They may just be three-quarter latex masks, but I don't know for sure because nobody could find one, and nobody seems to have a photo of one. There's just that old drawing by none other than Keith Ward, the guy who designed, created, sculpted a great deal of Topstone's masks back in the days. Keith Ward did actually design this, and actually I wouldn't have really expected that. I'm not sure this has the Keith Ward qualities to it, but the drawing does look just like the sculpture later turned out. Now in the 80s, when these were common, Topstone had resculpted a lot of their masks, so it's possible the original sculpture didn't look quite like this. Again, who can say, because nobody seems to own one. And you have to remember, you know, back in those days, nobody thought of these things as collectibles. There wasn't really any such thing as collecting masks, with the possible exception of probably an isolated kid here or there, like myself, who had a few Halloween masks up all year round in his room, you know. But it really wasn't a hobby back then. Now, I remember seeing Prickle Puss ubiquitously turning up every Halloween in the 80s. He was in all the stores, all the mask shops and costume departments. You would see Prickle Puss, but I don't think he was I don't think he was that big a hit with collectors because, for one thing, Topstone masks weren't really aimed at collectors. They're kind of flimsy and so forth, and they weren't really deluxe. And for another thing, I think nobody knew what to make of him. What is he? What is Prickle? I guess he's sort of a creature from the Black Lagoon styled monster, but he's got green hair. Could be female, actually. You know, that's another thing. I always thought maybe Prickle Puss was a female monster. You know, for one thing, you got the nice big eyes, and it's always pretty for a woman to have nice big eyes, right? And nice full lips like that, huh? And these fins jutting out here are kind of suggestive of cartoon character eyelashes a little bit. You know, when you draw the eyes and when you want to make it look female, you put the little lines on there that looks like little eyelashes. Those fins almost, well, as I say, they sort of suggest eyelashes. So this could be a girl. How about that? Yeah. And you know, another reason I always liked it was because you could talk with it. Yeah. Kiss me, baby. Yeah. Let's see your Michael Myers mask do this, for God's sake. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Yeah. Prickle Puss. You know, I probably would have dated her, really, if we had gone to high school together or something, because, well, like I said, it's very attractive for a woman to have nice big eyes and nice full lips, and, well, gosh, if she's got green hair, that's just gravy on the cake, you know. But anyway, Prickle Puss was available for a long time. Zillions of masks everywhere. Everybody had these at Halloween for many years, through the 80s, especially. In the 80s, you couldn't get away from old Prick here. But today, not so common, since Topstone isn't making masks anymore. And this one, unlike a lot of the other Topstone products, this character didn't end up with the kind of iconic fame that, like, the Shock Monster or some of those did. I think largely because its exposure was pretty much limited to Halloween stores and such, rather than monster magazines. I don't remember ever seeing a monster magazine that advertised Prickle Puss masks, but there probably were at some point. And another thing of interest here, old Prickle Puss was, like the Topstones of the 80s, a latex front half, can you see that? With the fur back half, like in the style of Be Something Studios masks, but with the added bonus feature of a taffeta lining. So I don't know why they did that, but it always seemed very deluxe to me. Makes the mask a little more substantial, and maybe somebody put one of these on and thought that, you know, the backside of acrylic fur, fabric-backed, net-backed, fun fur or whatever was scratchy on the back of the head or neck or something, and that's just for comfort. But it is kind of nice that they have that, and that's one way you can identify Topstone masks of the 80s. Is that I don't know of any other companies, major mask makers, who were doing that. There were other masks that had fur backs and latex fronts, but they usually just had the back side of the fur that looked like netting, like a mesh, exposed, rather than the nice fabric lining that Topstone put in them. But that's all Prickle Puss and I have to say for now. Until we see you up here again next time, I'm going to take this thing down to the lab and conduct some tests and see if I can figure out whether it's actually male or female. What do you think? Hmm?